This is the Toward a New World podcast with your host, Corinna Stoffel. As a space for all things regarding the global, collective transition we are in, we have conversations about transition, separation, and connection regarding oneself, others, and the earth. The aim is to educate, empower, and inspire. Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I was inspired last weekend to talk about curiosity today. And the reason being is last weekend really satisfied my thirst for and my hunger with curiosity. As a member of Gaia, I got a notification that there will be a ancient civilization conference, and I got the list of speakers, and there were two people that I'm following, like Robert Edward Grant and Freddie Silva, that were speaking, and so I had to be on, and being able to do it virtually really makes it easy. I don't need to drive anywhere from almost 7 hours to Boulder, book a hotel, etc. I can just stay home and do it easy. But initially, those two would satisfied me. And then I looked further, and there were other names that I recognized, like Greg Braden, for instance. And so I just, when last weekend came around, Robert Edward Grant opened up as the very first speaker, and then I just went, stayed on, and with some presentations I was really interested, and some after 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, I was bored and got out. It's not necessarily that, as curious as I am, not necessarily that I'm interested in everything, but I am willing to hear something new. I'm willing to suspend any beliefs that I have. For me, it's important to see or hear that there is a certain logic to the presentation. And that way it makes sense to me. And I'm also aware that often there is that notion of, oh, so-and-so is an outlier. They don't follow the orthodoxy or conventional knowledge and way of that field. And this weekend, remembering that, I as a sudden wondered, is an outlier truly an outlier, or is it someone who sees things from a different perspective that others haven't caught on to yet or are not willing to look from? So, because there were some presentations where I was really blown away. It was so obvious that it made perfect sense to, at least to me, what they were saying. And yeah, I get that they are considered outliers, but although that was not the case in archaeology, there is the idea that civilization started at a certain point, and then we have been finding on digs older. And so up to a certain point, they are willing to go, but then there is an excavation that is truly an outlier. So from my perspective, that excavation exists, there is not much discussion about it. You can discuss that maybe you did your carbon dating wrong. Potentially, I don't know that. I cannot find, or I'm not interested in finding that out. Let's put it that way. But right now, people agree that it's that old and it's far out from everything else. What else will we discover? Are we holding on that this can't be part of the civilization because we decided civilization is in that time span? Or is there enough curiosity to find out more? What that also gave me is that on some level, we all can be scientists because a lot of the material that was presented was started for the presenter by reading something and then reading something more and reading something more and finding out more information and going from there. And so I looked at it and I said, how much am I a scientist? How much can we all be scientists if we decide to be curious and really dive into a material that is of interest to us? And I am perfectly clear that I have my interests, and they're not necessarily shared by either anybody else or by others, and only some might be sharing my interests. But for me, it's a lot of fun to listen to podcasts. And I remember vividly listening to podcasts and then, whoa, that is weird. And then I listened some more and said, that makes sense. What if that is so? Just because I don't know about it means diddly squat, you know. I mean, there is so much. Even though I had an absolutely great education, there is so much I've never heard about. So much that if I would have heard about, might really become interested in it. So now I'm interested in it, and I'm willing to suspend any beliefs that I have. As I said, does it make sense? How does it hit me? And that is one thing that I found with going through this weekend's listing. There were, the titles of the different presentations. And even though I had no clue who the presenter was and what it exactly was about, but there was this, yes, that one. And I have learned to follow that, to trust that. And I call it the universe having my back. So what is it? Being open to listen to other points of views that do not necessarily align with my points of view, but what can I learn? What can I find out? Where can I expand my knowledge? And I don't have the need to be a scientist that publishes in the journals or so, but I want to be a scientist that finds out, that adds to the information that I have. And I really find it very interesting because what are the effects of curiosity? And that is one thing I am noticing. I am a generalist. I know a little bit here and a little bit there and a bit more in that arena and so on. And what that allows me is to often see connections, how one thing may be connected with another thing. And sometimes even presenters point out how, connections are there from their perspective. I don't need to be someone who specializes in one area and has in-depth knowledge. And we need that too. On the other hand, I'm also noticing that this focusing, what I call on the tip of your nose, does not allow people to see the connections, to perceive the connections. Everything is a little slice and is separate from the other, separate from the next one. Even though in nature, for instance, if we talk about biology, zoology, geography, they may be absolutely connected. So what if being a generalist is not a bad idea? The benefit that I see, that it allows me to be discerning. If as a sudden in the news there is talk about ABC, having a general knowledge allows me to discern, is that truth? Is there an agenda in it? How do I see the agenda? Do I agree with the agenda or not? And, there are the possibilities of cycles. Now, I want to go back. Often the agenda is a form of control, be it whatever it may. And I'm not somebody who is very much in favor of trying to control everybody. And I have been, if I look back over my life, I have been really opinionated and judge people out of that being opinionated. You are right, you are wrong. But it's no longer part of my world. So having some understanding, for instance, about geology, I love driving through the landscape and having that general knowledge. I can look out at the landscape and see, so what is the landscape telling me? Where might the road go through? What has happened here? When I've pulled out on an overview and said, that river once flowed over there and was cut off here. Just looking at the landscape, I can perceive the cycles that are there. And nature is a cyclical entity. Do I want to call it that? But there are cycles in nature, not just the 4 seasons. But as I said, the river got closed off, went through there. Eventually, it broke through in its old bed and went back into its old bed. So, what are you curious about? And what have you been curious about? How has that curiosity benefited you? And I like to flip it on its ear, so to speak. Is there some benefit that you would like to have? And so maybe the question is, what do I need to be curious about in order to gain that benefit, in order to gain that knowledge? so to speak. What area might you want to become curious about? And I would really honestly appreciate if you leave a comment and share about your curiosity, how you look at curiosity, how curiosity has benefited you. Because on some level, I think curiosity benefits at least every individual that is curious. So I'm going to leave it at that for this time. And I just want to give you a heads up that next week I will have a guest on the podcast. It'll be a longer one. And Ron Pevney and I will talk about conscious eldering. So you may want to go back to a previous podcast that I did where I looked at becoming older or becoming an elder. Best of luck, enjoy your life, and until next week. Bye bye.